Kenny here with Gardening Simplified. Today's May 6th, and kind of give you an update on the garden. We'll do a little tour this morning. Since we're up here, we'll go through here. This is the garlic, and it's doing good. The garlic that was planted late, because a lot of the stuff that was planted a little early in the fall didn't do quite as well, and it was probably too because I didn't take and watch the water on it. So these are coming up. Like I say, this is an experiment, so we'll see if these will go ahead and split into cloves, being we have such a long growing season. Now I did plant some more in that bare spot there and this bare spot here. It was a different type and it hadn't come up, so it might create a problem for next year's crop. What happens is, it's kind of like if you look in there, there's a small one. A lot of times if you leave a little node that you didn't catch or something like that, they come and grow back in amongst your other garlic. So now this isn't elephant garlic, although some of it appears on size like it is. It's just it is a big bulb, but it's one that's got a lot of garlic flavor. Now normally I don't grow in containers, but this is a project I'm doing. This is some Magic Molly. These are a deep purple potato, and I'm growing for seed. I will eat a few. They're supposed to be real good roasters, but I'm going to grow these. I have a 3 pound split between these two half barrel containers, and we'll see how they do. We have plenty long enough season, and hopefully they'll take off and do good. Now I have added some others, which I'm doing a lot of changing up, so and I'll clear this area here out. This was a area that I hadn't been using, but I'm going to go ahead and clear it out some more, get rid of some of the weeds. But this is a Atlantic Giant pumpkin. I think, being I have the space and it can take over up here, I'll go ahead and see if I can't get a nice sized pumpkin out of it for the grandkids. My compost pile here, this is kind of a temporary deal. Actually, if you'd seen the earlier one on compost, I've kind of got it piled up over here, and I did have 4 yards. I might have a yard left, if that. This is just temporary. I have a bunch of materials here. I'm redoing my fence, and then I'm going to build a regular composting area over here with 4 bins to start out, 5x5 bins I think. And I still have another 4 yards of this on my utility trailer that once I get this set up, I'll go ahead and I'll put it in the bins for storage and let it compost on out into some real good stuff. Now here's the broccoli and some cabbage. Now these were late, but the main thing about these were I was checking to see how long it would take germinating my seeds and getting a transplant plant. Now if these don't make it because the heat, this broccoli down here is kind of a heat resistant broccoli, so, and I got it strictly because the being in the south and the heat. Now I didn't water these like I should. You can see that there's the one plant there, it kind of bit the dust. I started setting up my drip system. I've got to put my emitters in here so it's set up for this bed, because this bed wasn't prepared. If you watched earlier, I had tilled in some partially composted stuff, and you can see what's left of it here. It's I call it a compost mulch, and then I come back and I put the compost on the top of it. But This hadn't settled in and packed in good, and I don't have a roller to go over it, so it's not quite as solid as to make a real good place to grow plants in. But it'll be a lot better for next year. I measured this bed off so that once I can build 2 more beds in between here, and this one can stay for next year, so it'll be a good bed by next year. Now this end down here, this is going to be some lettuce plants in here, and I've got the drips set up all the way down for that. The purple hull peas are growing. They still have grass they need weeded. I haven't got to that. Now these up here, these don't get much water, but those down there I have been watering. And these are actually, well, this row I did put some water on a few times, but these others that just had rainwater, they're actually doing pretty good in a lot of it. And it depends on the soil too, because where the grass wants to come on, it's better soil than the other. We have cucumber plants, and they're starting to take off. They're starting to bloom now. It's just male flowers. I haven't seen any females come on yet. Or the bell pepper is starting to produce. As you can see, there's a few down here at the bottom. Look like we got a little flower left on that one, but there's a few right down there on the bottom. So they're starting out. These cherry tomatoes that were really not very healthy looking, as you can see, these are taking off. Even the one that looked like it wouldn't make it, it's taking off, and it's really trying to flower now. The pepper plants, they're just going crazy as far as peppers go. They're starting to get some size to them. It won't be long. We'll be picking the jalapenos, but the plants are starting to get loaded up on that. They're just plenty of them there. The potatoes, some are doing pretty good, some are having problems. I think some of them had some problems with blackleg, but I can't be for sure, but I think it did. But some of these, and I don't know if this one, it doesn't appear to have the problems of blackleg. I have some moles or voles that's down up underneath here, and what they're doing is they're tunneling up under and causing them to have a problem growing. In fact, I actually dug one up. Now the red potatoes, they tend to do better, and it doesn't quite affect them quite as much, but they're still having some problems. But like I say, a lot of these Yukon Golds like this, where it's wilting down and stuff, and I dug out one right here, and it doesn't have a lot of roots to it, and it had a hole there, a small hole, so either it was a vole or it was a real small mole that was tunneling through there. But there, some of them's blooming, so we'll get potatoes off them. This was way more than what we needed on that. The corn is starting to come on. It's sweet corn, so it seems to tassel earlier. Now I did put in, these are sugar pie pumpkins. I put them at the end of the row, and I'm going to let these kind of get shaded in the evening by this corn, so they'll do a lot better. I got one actually in the row there. Some of the corn is really doing better. It might be because it is close to the sprinkler. It's getting a little more water. Now these here are some winter squash. This here's butternut that's across here, and it'll grow in amongst the corn. And then we get down here, and I have some more winter squash. This here is Table Queen. I think it's kind of an acorn squash, and we have more of them along this end of the corn. And then this here is buttercup squash. So we'll have plenty of squash. It's got plenty of room to grow out. The turnips, they seem to be doing better down here where it stays real wet because of the amount of water. But I'm sure it's looking like there's a little place where bugs are, and that we might have a problem with bugs. I usually like to plant my turnips earlier and do them. Here's the sweet potatoes. They seem to have been struggling since I've composted around them, though it looks like they're going to come back. There's a few that's probably going to be lost, but that's still going to produce a lot of sweet potatoes. We got our mustard here and our kale here. We always like the small greens, so we don't plant them spaced out like a lot if you was going to be picking them for big salad leaves or something. We have pumpkins here. They were kind of struggling, but now that they've got some compost, they seem to be doing better too. And that's the same with the watermelons. They should have been quite a bit better, but I've been so busy with other parts that I hadn't been over here and taking care of this quite like I should. And that's what happens sometimes in the garden. If you don't have things set up before, you spend a lot of time during the year trying to get it right. I think this cucumber, if it makes it, it'll be slim chance, but I'm not cucumber, cantaloupe. But it's right there. Now in the south, some of y'all might be familiar with this. Now, I end up knocking it down, but this is a poke plant, and we make poke salad, or they call it poke salad. They'll take and pick the leaves off it and boil them up. A lot of times they'll put an egg in there too and mix it up that way. I normally break them off. These things go crazy, but this plant puts on purple berries later on in the season, and now the berries are poisonous. So that's one thing to be aware of. Now on our tomatoes, tomatoes look good. They actually seem to be doing a little bit better towards the top end where they seem to get a little more shade. But it's you can see they're loaded up with tomatoes. Now these are celebrities over here, and now celebrity is I'd have to say determinate and indeterminate. It's acts like a determinant early in the season. It grows up, sets a lot of fruit at one time, so it comes ripe, and then it'll continue to grow after that. Now, as you can see, these kind of look wild because the amount of vines that's coming up. Now they say you can't tie, you got to prune back indeterminate tomatoes. You can't keep more than one vine and airflow and all that stuff. It's very easy. I kind of harp on that. Then they say, oh no, it's the vine won't it won't take and support all that fruit, but it'll definitely support support the fruit. As you can see, it's still early. Now, it might take a little bit longer for these to get the size. Now, these aren't real big tomatoes in the end. They're probably about 8 to 12 ounce tomatoes, but for canning, these are great. And as you can see, it's loaded up. But what I do is, I don't prune off the bottom. Now, see, we've got a lot of them I've taken off the suckers low, but this one I just limbed up from there. And what I'll do is I'll just tie this in. Now, you don't necessarily have to tie this to the stake. You can tie this vine right here up to this other vine that's running up. That's in what I do is when I'm tying up, if I have leaves in the way, some of these limbs, prune them out. These lower leaves, yes, they're doing a little bit of photosynthesis, but a lot of times they're not really doing that much to support the plant. So I take them out. I try to take out all the limbs below the fruit, just like you would if you was commercially growing in a greenhouse or something. They'll take them down, and the reason for that is you're growing fruit, and your lower leaves down here, these lower branches, after a while they're not doing much, and especially if they're shaded all off in there, they're not doing much. Now you can see this one here looks like something's been eating on it. When I come in here the next time, I'll trim that off. And I trim quite a few limbs when I come in here to I'll check for weeds. I'll check for I come through here daily checking for hornworms or cutworms. You know, make sure I don't have any damage that way. But I'll trim those leaves off. They start getting pretty thick in there. Now these, and of course, look like I broke a limb when we move this up, which sometimes that happens. But these limbs start getting real tight in there on some of these. What I'll do is I'll take them out. I'll start watching. If I start seeing a bunch of holes in them, they'll start looking like they're not as healthy. I'll just trim it off. It hadn't stopped the plant, because the majority of the photosynthesis happens at the top of the plant. And as you can see, they're just loaded with tomatoes. Now some of the plants are younger, so they won't have as many on there. And they say, oh, your tomatoes can't be laying out, the sun's going to burn them. That doesn't happen. In fact, it helps them to ripen whenever they get the sun to them like that. Now you might have, when you get too much sun in there, and in the middle of summer, you know, it could cook a tomato. You might have tomato sauce, but normally not. And as far as airflow, as long as you take those limbs out, you have plenty of airflow, so you don't have blight. We have had some rain. Now these ones here stay more up into the shade in the morning. I keep telling you, this is my unknown tomato. Now I don't know, it puts on a whole lot of blooms out here. It's really looks like it's going to set a lot of fruit. I think my wife was saying, well, this one ain't setting any tomatoes, but it is. It's starting to set some here. And they're not real little, so they're not cherry tomatoes. But like I say, it's just fun. I won't know what it is, but like I say, it's a little later than the other ones for setting fruit. Now these, I moved these out here yesterday. These were under the grow light. I started them in there, but I kept keeping them in. I didn't want them out in the sun and drying out. And I noticed that they tend to wilt a lot when they're in there. Plants like cool temperatures at night. These are romaine over here, and this is a broadleaf lettuce here. And I'm going to put these on the end of the row over there with the broccoli and cabbage. But I was planning to put them out last night, but I said the way my cabbages and broccoli was wilting, I figured I would get my drip set up first and then put them out this evening. And then I think it's going to be overcast and maybe 70 tomorrow. I'm not sure. So that'll be a lot easier on them. I have a few onions, my experimental onions that I was doing. So I'll take and put those out too. Now these are the early girls, and they have tomatoes. As you can see, they're hiding off in there now. But I have to say, even though they're known for early tomatoes, the Celebrity seems by far a better tomato. Now they're both F1s, and like I said earlier, I'm trying to catch the seeds from them and see what comes up, just for the fact, something to do. But these seeds, being their F1s, it isn't any telling what you end up with. And this one, I don't know what it is, because it's definitely a mystery. So we'll see how that goes. But like I say, it is good. It's good practice. As far as if you're going to do this, you would you'd want to make sure that you knew what you was doing whenever you got really ready to save seed. So we'll see how this goes. It's a fairly easy process, and we'll see what turns out for next year. But that's kind of where we're going on the garden end. Now we'll look at a little bit of fruit. Last year I did a video on I was propagating fig trees, and I had a problem come up, and I kept wanting to get back to it, and I kept forgetting about it. But now these are getting to be about probably 14-16 inches high or so. But as I was doing this, and I kept, we always make plans to put our plants in the ground, and a cold snap come on, a hard freeze. And I had 4 plants left, because I think I did 7 or 8, but I'd give away a bunch of them. Or maybe I had five left. I'd give away 3 of them. But the ones that I kept, the only 2 of them came back, because like I say, it was a hard freeze, and the thing about it was they were in buckets. If they'd have been in the ground, it would have saved the roots. I come out that morning, I seen them all drooping, frozen leaves, and I moved them into the shop where it was warm right off, and I guess it saved these 2. And these are starting to come back and put on some growth fairly fast since they've come out. So I will have my fig trees, and I can propagate off of these. But that's one of those things, don't put off things for too long. I know sometimes we have to. Okay, and the peach trees, the peaches are coming on. I had taken and pulled off or most of them. I might have missed a few. They got quite a bit of weight on some of the limbs. It's going to pull them down. As long as you don't get a bunch of rains, it's humid. Whenever they really start coming on, you don't have to worry about breaking limbs. A lot of people prop them up with boards. I try to take them down. Now, occasionally I'll come out here and I'll find one like this. Either a bird's got that or a bug. I'll take this off and I'll just throw it aside. No need in wasting time with the tree producing that, or trying to anyway. This one here, same way. It's got quite a few still on it. It might have to have some taken off. I might just leave it. Maybe the squirrels will leave me one or two and see what happens. Now this is my persimmon tree. It would never put limbs out on the lower part. I didn't want a real tall persimmon, but it never would limb out here, so last year I clipped the top off. It looked like it was about to die from the heat, like it wasn't surviving. I clipped the top, and now it's really putting on some limbs, so I can choose what I want and which way I want it to grow this fall. I did have one peach tree that died last year. Well, I say it died. I think its trunk come back from the bottom, but I don't know what kind of rootstock it was grafted to. Now this plum tree, it bloomed, but it didn't set any fruit. And I didn't try pollinating this. Now, we had bees out here. We had plenty of little yellow flowers around here. Bees were everywhere. But bees, for some reason, they're only going after certain things in the garden, because and on the fruit trees, because the tomato plants, I've never seen a bee on the flowers. There was other places. Now this one here, I keep ending up with some of these. It's starting to yellow. It's probably going to fall off. We do have some fruit on here. This one actually set a few this year, but it's not a whole lot. But I'm not really concerned. I'm trying to get these trees up to a good sturdy size. The Granny Smith apple tree, now it just had a couple of blooms. It didn't set any fruit, which I wasn't concerned. It was kind of the same way as the other. It was tall, not setting lower leaves and limbs, where it would bush out from here and come up. So I topped it off, and we'll see how it does. Now these suckers like this, normally I'll pull them off, but what I'm going to do is see if I can get some of these to root, and if I can, take and propagate some more apples from that tree. Now there's a little tomato that I pulled out of the pot, showing about replacing your tomatoes, and there's another little one that I put in there. I'm getting them acclimated outside so they'll actually grow good. Now these two here, these are apple trees that I grew from seed. Now they might not taste like the originals, and if they're not good, what I'll use is I'll use the trunk and graft on something that's got good flavor from one of my other apple trees. Over here we got some more. Now this is a white crab apple. I planted this one last year. It's still kind of limp and wanting to fall over, so I put a stake there beside it. I have a few more out here. Now I don't know if I have an apple on anything. These trees are really not that young, but they're not doing that good. It's got to do with the soil. I'm going to come in here and I'll take these suckers off of here and I'll pot them up, see if I can't get them to root. But the soil isn't that great, so I'm going to need to start maybe composting them or something. Now this here, this pear tree, it's got a few pears on it this year, and I attribute that to hand pollinating, because like I say, I don't know that the bees have really done anything with it. But I didn't pollinate any of my apples, and some of them really didn't bloom. They're just they're really spindly, and what I'll do is I'm going to come and I'm going to do some trimming back on these and see if I can't get a little better shape on some of them. You can see like this one here where it's really put on a lot of tall growth, and I'm going to come in here in June and I'm going to do a process that some do with the new growth and cut it halfway back. So when you have these limbs that's come up, you know, like this limb here is already let's see, this limb is already grown about 3 feet, and what I'll come back and I'll cut this off halfway in June, because what I'm trying to do is get the trunk bigger and get a fuller tree, so I don't really have giant apple trees. I want apple trees that really have some nice firm limbs to hold fruit, and where I can get a good bit of fruit off the tree. But that kind of sizes it up. I have a few other peach trees and apple trees on the property, but it's pretty much all the same. If you like this video, you want to see more of them, just hit the subscribe and the bell button, and you'll be notified whenever another one comes out. And if you think it might be some information that might help somebody, you know, share it so they can see it too. Happy growing.